The gunshot that killed Thomas Sutherland on a dusty September morning in 1883 was meant for the rattlesnake coiled near his horse, but his daughter Olivia watched the bullet ricochet off a rock and tear through her father's chest instead, and in that single moment, everything she had ever known about love and safety shattered like glass under a boot heel. Silver Peak. Nevada was a town carved out of desperation and silver dreams, where the mountains loomed like ancient sentinels and the desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Olivia had lived there all her 22 years, first with her mother until fever took her when Olivia was barely 12, then with just her father for 3 peaceful years, and finally with her father and his new wife, Catherine, for the last 7 years. Catherine was a handsome woman from San Francisco, dark-haired and sharp-featured, who had come to Silver Peak seeking a fresh start after her first husband died in a mining accident. Thomas Sutherland had been lonely, and Catherine had been persuasive, and within 6 months of meeting they were married in the small wooden church at the edge of town. Olivia had tried to be happy about it. She had tried to welcome Catherine into their home, into the ranch her father had built with his own hands. But Catherine had never warmed to her, had never looked at Olivia with anything approaching maternal affection. Instead, there had always been a coldness in her stepmother's eyes, a calculation that made Olivia feel like an unwanted piece of furniture that took up too much space. The day her father died, they had been out riding the fence line together, checking for breaks after a summer storm. It was something they did together every few weeks, a ritual that kept them close even as Catherine tried to wedge herself between them. Olivia had spotted the snake first, coiled and rattling near her father's mare. She had called out a warning, and Thomas had drawn his pistol quickly, but the ground was still wet from rain, rocky and unpredictable. The shot had gone wide, struck a boulder, and the bullet had careened straight into Thomas Sutherland's heart. He died in Olivia's arms, blood spreading across his shirt like spilled wine, his eyes going distant and empty as she screamed for help that would not come in time. By the time she had ridden back to the ranch house with her father's body draped across his horse, her hands were stained red and her mind was numb with shock. Catherine had stood on the porch watching Olivia approach with an expression that was impossible to read. When Olivia had explained what happened, her voice breaking with every word, Catherine's face had hardened into something cold and terrible. "You killed him," Catherine had said, her voice flat and certain. "You called out and startled him. You made him rush the shot." "No," Olivia had whispered, still holding her father's lifeless hand. "It was an accident. The bullet ricocheted." "You killed him," Catherine repeated, louder this time. "This is your fault. You took him from me." The funeral was held 3 days later, and Catherine's accusations only grew louder and more vicious. She told anyone who would listen that Olivia was responsible, that the girl had been careless and reckless, that she had caused Thomas's death through her own negligence. Some people in town believed her. Others looked at Olivia with pity, but said nothing to contradict the grieving widow. Olivia found herself isolated, drowning in guilt and grief with no one to throw her a lifeline. The ranch should have been split between Catherine and Olivia, according to Thomas's will, but Catherine contested it immediately, claiming that Olivia had no right to anything after what she had done. The lawyer in Silver Peak, a tired man named Howard Brennan who smelled of whiskey and defeat, advised Olivia that fighting Catherine in court would be expensive and lengthy, and that she might lose everything in the process. "Best thing you can do is take what your father left you in personal effects and make a new start somewhere else," Brennan had told her, not meeting her eyes. "Your stepmother is determined, and she has the sympathy of the town on her side." Olivia had felt the walls closing in. She had nowhere to go, no family to turn to, and very little money of her own. Her father had always provided for her, had always promised that she would be taken care of. Now he was gone, and the woman who had married him was systematically destroying everything Olivia had left. It was on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after the funeral, that Catherine finally made her intentions clear. Olivia had been in the barn, brushing down her father's horse, when Catherine appeared in the doorway like an avenging shadow. You need to leave, Catherine said without preamble. I want you gone by the end of the week. Olivia looked up, her hands stilling on the brush. This is my home. This is my ranch now. Your father left it to me as his wife. You have no claim here. The will said, The will was written before you killed him, Catherine interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. I will not have you under my roof another day longer than necessary. You are a constant reminder of what you took from me. I did not kill him, Olivia said, her voice stronger now despite the tears threatening to fall. It was an accident. You know it was an accident. I know that he would still be alive if you had not been there. I know that you are poison to this family. Pack your things and go, Olivia. There's nothing for you here anymore. Catherine turned and walked away, her boots clicking against the barn floor with terrible finality. Olivia stood there in the dimness, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, and felt the last of her strength crumble. She had never felt so alone in her entire life. That night, she lay in her childhood bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. She had perhaps $50 to her name, a few pieces of her mother's jewelry, and her horse. That was all. She could not stay in Silver Peak, not with Catherine poisoning everyone against her. But where could she go? She had no skills beyond ranch work, no education beyond what her father had taught her. The world beyond Silver Peak seemed vast and terrifying. She must have fallen asleep eventually because she woke to the sound of shouting and the acrid smell of smoke. Olivia bolted upright, her heart hammering, and realized with horror that something was burning. She threw open her bedroom door and was met with a wall of heat and smoke. The house was on fire. Olivia grabbed the quilt from her bed, wrapped it around herself, and stumbled down the hallway. The smoke was thick and choking, making her eyes water and her lungs scream. She could hear the roar of flames, could feel the heat intensifying. She made it to the front door and burst out into the cool night air, coughing and gasping. Behind her, the ranch house that her father had built was engulfed in flames, the fire reaching toward the sky like hungry fingers. Ranch hands were running from the bunkhouse, shouting and grabbing buckets, but Olivia could see it was already too late. The house was lost. "Where is Catherine?" someone yelled. Olivia spun around, her mind still foggy from smoke. "I do not know. She was not in her room?" "Someone checked the barn." The chaos swirled around her as men ran in every direction trying to save what they could. Olivia stood there in her nightgown and quilt, watching her childhood home burn, and felt a strange numbness settle over her. Catherine emerged from the barn a few minutes later, her face streaked with soot, and when her eyes found Olivia, they were filled with a terrible rage. "You did this!" Catherine screamed, pointing at Olivia with a shaking hand. "You burned down my house! You tried to kill me!" "No," Olivia said, her voice hoarse from smoke. "I was asleep. I woke up when the fire started." "Liar! You wanted revenge for being asked to leave. You are a murderer and now an arsonist." The ranch hands looked between Olivia and Catherine, uncertainty written on their faces. Olivia realized with dawning horror that Catherine was going to blame her for this too, was going to turn this tragedy into another weapon to use against her. "I did not start the fire," Olivia said louder, looking around at the assembled men. "I have no reason to burn down my own home." "It is not your home anymore," Catherine said coldly, "and you have every reason to want to hurt me. Someone fetch the sheriff. I want this girl arrested." Olivia did not wait to see if anyone would follow Catherine's orders. She turned and ran, still wrapped in her quilt, barefoot across the hard, packed dirt. She heard shouting behind her, but she did not stop. She ran to the barn, found her horse, and with shaking hands managed to get a bridle on the mare. There was no time for a saddle. Olivia swung herself up onto the horse's bare back, kicked her heels, and rode out into the darkness. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay. Behind her, the fire lit up the sky like a false dawn, and ahead of her, the desert stretched out endless and unforgiving. Olivia rode east, away from Silver Peak, away from everything she had ever known. The September night was cold, and she was woefully unprepared for flight. She had no money, no food, no proper clothing, just her nightgown, a quilt, and a horse. As the adrenaline faded and reality set in, Olivia began to shake with cold and shock. She did not know how long she rode, an hour, maybe two. Her horse was beginning to tire, and she knew she needed to stop, needed to find shelter. But the desert offered nothing but sagebrush and emptiness. Finally, when her body was numb with cold and exhaustion, she saw a small orange glow in the distance, a campfire. Olivia hesitated, weighing the danger of approaching strangers against the danger of dying from exposure in the desert. Survival won out. She urged her horse toward the light. As she got closer, she could make out a single figure sitting by the fire, a horse picketed nearby, a man, alone. That should have made her more cautious, but Olivia was beyond caution now. She was desperate. She stopped at the edge of the firelight, and the man looked up. He was young, perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair and strong features. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, worn denim, a dusty hat pushed back on his head, a holster on his hip. His eyes were dark and watchful, but not unkind. "Help me," Olivia said, her voice cracking. "Please." The cowboy stood slowly, his hand not moving toward his gun, which she appreciated. He looked her over, taking in her nightgown, the quilt, her bare feet, and the exhausted horse beneath her. "You are in trouble," he said. It was not a question. "Yes?" He nodded once decisively. "Get down. Warm yourself by the fire. Your horse needs water." Olivia slid off her mare, her legs nearly buckling when her feet hit the ground. The cowboy caught her elbow, steadying her, and guided her to the fire. He draped a blanket over her shoulders without comment, then took her horse's reins and led the mare to a small depression where he had water stored in a canvas bag. Olivia sank down by the fire, pulling the blanket tight around herself, and watched as the stranger tended to her horse with practiced efficiency. He was methodical and gentle, checking the mare's legs and hooves, running a hand along her flanks. When he was satisfied, he picketed the horse near his own and returned to the fire. "I am Dalton Norris," he said, settling across the fire from her. "Who are you, and what are you running from?" "My name is Olivia Sutherland," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and I am running from my stepmother. She blames me for my father's death, and now she thinks I burned down her house." "Did you?" Dalton asked, his tone neutral. "No, I did not do either thing. My father died in an accident 2 weeks ago, a ricocheting bullet. Tonight the ranch house caught fire while I was sleeping inside it. My stepmother is convinced I am responsible for both." Dalton studied her face in the firelight, and Olivia met his gaze steadily. She had nothing left to lose. If he did not believe her, if he turned her away, she did not know what she would do. "I believe you," he said finally. "You have the look of someone who has lost everything, not someone who destroyed it." Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet. If your stepmother is looking for you, she will get the sheriff involved. The law around here takes arson seriously." "I know. That is why I ran." "Where were you planning to go?" "I do not know. Anywhere but Silver Peak." Dalton nodded slowly. "I am heading to California, work on a ranch near Sacramento. I could use company on the road, and you need to get far away from here. We could travel together." Olivia looked at him, this stranger who was offering her salvation with such casual ease. "Why would you help me?" "Because you need help, and I can provide it," Dalton said simply, "and because I know what it is like to be blamed for something that was not your fault." There was a story there, Olivia could tell, but she was too tired to ask for it. "I have no money to pay you." "I am not asking for payment. I am offering companionship on a long journey, that is all." Olivia pulled the blanket tighter and nodded. "Then I accept. Thank you. Dalton Norris. Get some rest. We will leave at first light before anyone from Silver Peak can track you here." Olivia lay down by the fire, wrapped in Dalton's blanket and her quilt, and closed her eyes. For the first time since her father died, she felt a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. She had found an ally in this cowboy. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. She woke before dawn to find Dalton already breaking camp. He had coffee brewing over the coals and handed her a tin cup without comment. Olivia sipped the bitter liquid gratefully, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "We need to get you proper clothes," Dalton said, rolling up his bedroll. "Cannot have you riding across the territory in a nightgown. There is a small trading post about 10 miles south. We will stop there first." "I told you, I have no money." "I have enough for both of us for now. You can pay me back when you get on your feet again." Olivia wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She could not travel dressed as she was. "I will pay you back, I promise." "I know you will." They rode out as the sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky with streaks of pink and gold. Dalton set a steady but not punishing pace, clearly mindful of Olivia's exhausted horse. They did not talk much during the ride, but the silence was comfortable rather than awkward. Olivia found herself studying her companion when she thought he was not looking. He sat his horse with the easy grace of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle, and there was a calmness about him that she found reassuring. The trading post was little more than a shack with a corral, run by an elderly man with one eye and a tobacco-stained beard. Dalton negotiated for a split skirt, a blouse, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat while Olivia waited outside, still wrapped in her quilt. The trader looked at her curiously but asked no questions, which she appreciated. When Dalton emerged with the clothing bundle, he pointed to the side of the building. "You can change back there. I will keep watch." Olivia took the clothes and disappeared around the corner. The garments were worn and a bit too large, but they were clean and practical. She dressed quickly, braiding her long dark hair and tucking it up under the hat. When she emerged, Dalton nodded approvingly. "Much better. Now you look like you belong out here." They continued west, following trails that Dalton seemed to know by instinct. He was a skilled navigator, always finding water and decent grazing for the horses. At night, he would make camp and cook simple meals over the fire. Beans, bacon, sometimes a rabbit he managed to shoot during the day. Olivia tried to make herself useful, gathering firewood and tending the horses, but she felt acutely aware of how much she was depending on this man's charity. On their third night together, as they sat by the fire eating a supper of salt pork and hardtack, Olivia finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at her. "You said you knew what it was like to be blamed for something that was not your fault. What happened to you?" Dalton was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. Olivia thought he might not answer, but then he spoke, his voice low and measured. "I was working on a ranch in Montana 3 years ago. Big spread, good owner. I was in charge of breaking the horses. One day the owner's son wanted to try riding a stallion I'd been working with. The horse was not ready, still too wild, but the son was stubborn and proud. He got on that horse against my explicit warning." Dalton paused, took a sip of coffee. "The stallion threw him. He landed wrong, broke his neck, died instantly. The owner blamed me, said I should have never let his son near that horse. Never mind that I told the boy not to ride him. Never mind that the son was 25 years old and made his own choices. The owner wanted someone to blame for his grief, and I was convenient." "That is terrible," Olivia said softly. "What did you do?" "I left. There was no point in staying where I was not wanted and not trusted. I have been drifting ever since, taking work where I can find it. The job in California is a fresh start. New place, people who do not know my history." Olivia understood that impulse all too well. "I am sorry you went through that. And I am sorry for what you are going through. Grief makes people cruel sometimes. They need someone to carry their pain, so they dump it on the nearest person and call it justice. My stepmother never liked me," Olivia admitted. "Even before my father died, she resented me. I think she wanted him all to herself, wanted to pretend he had no life before her. His death just gave her an excuse to act on feelings she had always had." "Blame is not yours to carry," Dalton said firmly, looking directly at her. "Your father's death was an accident. The fire was an accident, or maybe even something your stepmother started herself to frame you. Either way, none of it is your burden. The words hit Olivia like a physical force, and she felt something crack open inside her chest. For 2 weeks, she had been drowning in guilt and self-recrimination, wondering if she had called out at the wrong moment, if she had somehow caused the ricochet. Hearing someone else say definitively that it was not her fault made tears stream down her face. "I keep seeing it," she whispered. "The bullet hitting him, the blood, his eyes going empty." Dalton moved around the fire to sit beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Those images will fade with time, not completely, but enough that you can breathe around them, I promise." "How do you know?" "Because I used to see that boy hitting the ground every time I closed my eyes. Now I only see it sometimes. Grief and guilt are like wounds. They heal, but they leave scars." Olivia leaned against his shoulder just slightly and was grateful when he did not pull away. They sat like that until the fire burned low. And for the first time since her father died, Olivia felt like she might actually survive this. They continued west, falling into an easy routine. Dalton taught Olivia how to shoot properly, how to read the land for water and danger, how to make a fire even when everything was damp. She was a quick learner, and he was a patient teacher. They talked more as the days passed, sharing stories from their pasts, learning each other's histories. Olivia told him about her mother, who had been kind and gentle, who had taught Olivia to read and to love the ranch. She told him about her father, who had been strong and fair, who had built something good out of Nevada dust. She told him about Catherine, about the coldness that had settled over the ranch after the marriage, about the growing isolation she had felt. Dalton told her about growing up in Texas, the son of a horse trader who had taught him everything about working with animals. He told her about losing his parents to cholera when he was 18, about drifting north and west looking for work and purpose. He told her about the ranches he had worked, the people he had met, the vast loneliness of the cowboy life. "Do you ever want to settle down?" Olivia asked one evening as they made camp near a creek. "Sometimes," Dalton admitted. "It would be nice to have a place that is mine, something permanent. But that requires money I do not have yet. Maybe after a few years in California, I can save enough." "What would you do with your own place?" "Raise horses. Good horses. The kind that are smart and loyal. I have always thought that the best horses are the ones raised with patience and respect, not broken through force." Olivia smiled. "My father felt the same way. He said that anything worth having is worth treating well." "He sounds like he was a good man." "He was the best man I ever knew," Olivia said quietly. Then, surprising herself, she added, "Until I met you." Dalton looked at her across the fire, and something passed between them, something warm and significant. He did not say anything, but the smile he gave her made her heart skip. They crossed into California in mid-October, the landscape shifting from desert to foothills, and Olivia felt a sense of relief. They had put hundreds of miles between themselves and Silver Peak, and with each day that passed, the likelihood of Catherine finding her diminished. She was beginning to believe that she might actually be safe. But she was also beginning to realize something else. She did not want to part ways with Dalton Norris. Over the past 3 weeks, he had become more than just her rescuer. He had become her friend, her teacher, her confidant. And increasingly, when she looked at him, she felt something deeper than friendship stirring in her chest. She thought he might feel it too. She caught him watching her sometimes, his dark eyes soft and thoughtful. He found excuses to touch her hand when passing her things, to stand close to her when they were tending the horses. The air between them felt charged with possibility, but neither of them had spoken about it. They reached Sacramento in late October, and Dalton led them to the ranch where he had secured work. It was a large operation, hundreds of acres of rolling hills and good grazing land. The owner, a weathered man named George Hammond, greeted Dalton warmly and looked Olivia over with curiosity. "This is Miss Olivia Sutherland," Dalton said. "She is traveling with me. I wondered if you might have work for her as well." Hammond scratched his chin. "What can you do, Miss Sutherland?" I can work with horses, mend tack, cook, handle a rifle, and I am not afraid of hard work, Olivia said, lifting her chin. I was raised on a ranch in Nevada. Nevada, What brings you to California? I needed a fresh start, sir. Hammond studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I can always use good help. Pay is $15 a month plus room and board. You will bunk in the house with the cook and the housekeeper. Acceptable? More than acceptable. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet. We work hard here. Dawn until dusk, 6 days a week. Can you handle that? I can handle it, Hammond smiled. Then welcome to the Circle H, Miss Sutherland. Dalton, show her around and get her settled. You both start work tomorrow. Dalton led Olivia to the main house, where she was introduced to Mrs. Perry, the cook, and Martha, the housekeeper. Both women were friendly and welcoming, and they showed Olivia to a small but clean room on the second floor. You did well, Dalton said when they had a moment alone. Hammond is a fair man. You will like working here. Thank you for vouching for me, for everything, really. I could not have survived without you. You are stronger than you think, Olivia. You would have found a way. She wanted to tell him how much he meant to her, wanted to put words to the feelings that had been growing during their journey, but the moment did not feel right. Instead, she just smiled and said, Get some rest. We have an early start tomorrow. Working on the Circle H was exactly what Olivia needed. The days were long and exhausting, filled with physical labor that left no room for dwelling on the past. She threw herself into the work, proving herself capable and reliable. Hammond noticed, and within a few weeks, he was giving her more responsibility, trusting her with the horses, and even asking her opinion on ranch matters. Dalton was working as the head wrangler, and Olivia saw him every day. They often ate lunch together, sitting on the corral fence and talking about the horses, the work, their plans for the future. The attraction between them was undeniable now, simmering just beneath the surface of every conversation. It finally came to a head on a Sunday afternoon in November. Sunday was the one day they did not work, and Olivia had wandered down to the creek that ran through the ranch property. She was sitting on the bank, her boots off and her feet in the cool water, when Dalton appeared through the trees. Mind if I join you? He asked, as please do. He sat beside her, pulling off his own boots and rolling up his pant legs to dip his feet in the water. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the water flow past. Olivia, Dalton said finally, I need to tell you something. She looked at him, her heart suddenly beating faster. What is it? These past weeks, traveling with you, working alongside you, I have come to care for you, more than just as a friend or a traveling companion. He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes serious. I think I am falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that before another day passed. Olivia felt her breath catch. Dalton. You do not have to say anything if you're not ready. I just wanted you to know where I stand. I do have something to say, Olivia said softly. She reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I feel the same way. I have for a while now. You saved my life, Dalton. But more than that, you gave me hope when I had none. You made me feel like I was worth something again. I love you. Dalton's face broke into a smile so bright and genuine that it transformed him. You mean that? With all my heart. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Olivia did not want to pull away. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. I want to build a life with you, Dalton said, still holding her hand. I know it is fast, and we have only known each other a short time, but I have never been more certain of anything. I want that too, Olivia said, but I need you to know that I come with complications. Catherine might still be looking for me. The law might still think I'm an arsonist. Then we will face those complications together, Dalton said firmly. You are not alone anymore, Olivia. Whatever comes, we will handle it side by side. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. I never thought I would feel this way again. After my father died, I thought joy was gone forever. Joy is not gone. It is just beginning. They sat by the creek until the sun began to set, talking about their future, making plans. Dalton wanted to save enough money to buy his own small ranch, maybe 50 acres to start. Olivia wanted to help, to build something together. They talked about horses and children and growing old together, and for the first time since that terrible day in September, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a future that was not defined by tragedy. Over the following months, their relationship deepened and grew. They kept it relatively private at first, not wanting to cause gossip among the ranch hands, but Hammond noticed and approved. He told them he had seen the way they looked at each other from the beginning and was glad they had figured it out. In February of 1884, Dalton asked Olivia to marry him properly. He did it simply without fanfare, as they were grooming horses in the barn. He just looked at her and said, "Marry me, Olivia. Be my wife." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in March in a small ceremony in Sacramento, with Hammond and the ranch staff as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Perry helped her sew, and Dalton wore his best shirt and vest. The ceremony was short but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Olivia felt a completeness she had thought she would never experience again. Hammond gave them a small cabin on the ranch property as a wedding gift, and they moved in together, creating their first real home. Olivia decorated it with wildflowers and curtains she stitched herself, while Dalton built furniture and shelves. It was modest, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. Life settled into a happy rhythm. They worked hard during the day and came home to each other at night. They talked about everything and nothing, laughed together, supported each other through hard days. Dalton continued to teach Olivia about horses, and she proved to have a natural gift for it. Hammond increasingly relied on both of them to manage the horse operation. In June, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to be sure before telling Dalton. When she finally shared the news, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am ecstatic. I am terrified. I am everything." "I am terrified too," Olivia admitted, "but I know we will figure it out together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Olivia continued working until she was too ungainly to do so safely. Mrs. Perry fussed over her, making sure she ate well and rested enough. Dalton became even more protective, constantly asking if she needed anything, worrying about every little pain or discomfort. "You're going to drive me crazy if you keep hovering," Olivia told him one evening, though her tone was affectionate. "I cannot help it. You are carrying our child. That is the most precious cargo in the world." Their son was born in February of 1885, during a cold snap that left frost on the windows. The labor was long and difficult, but when Olivia finally held the squalling infant in her arms, she felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. "He is perfect," Dalton whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "What should we name him?" Olivia had been thinking about this for months. "Thomas," she said softly, "after my father, if that is acceptable to you." Dalton's eyes were suspiciously bright. "That is more than acceptable. Thomas Norris. It is a strong name." Little Thomas was a healthy, happy baby, and both Olivia and Dalton were besotted. They took turns walking him when he cried, marveled at every milestone, and bored everyone on the ranch with stories about their brilliant son. Life was good. Olivia had found happiness again, had built a family with a man who loved her completely. She still thought about her father sometimes, still felt the ache of his loss, but it no longer consumed her. She had learned that it was possible to hold grief and joy at the same time, to honor the past while building a future. In the summer of 1885, when Thomas was 6 months old, a man came to the ranch looking for Dalton. He was a marshal from Nevada, and Olivia's blood ran cold when she saw the badge on his chest. "I am looking for information about a woman named Olivia Sutherland," the marshal said. "I was told she might have passed through this area last year." Dalton, standing beside Olivia with Thomas in his arms, squared his shoulders. "What do you want with Olivia Sutherland?" "There was an incident in Silver Peak, Nevada, a fire at a ranch. The owner, Catherine Sutherland, claimed that her stepdaughter started the fire deliberately. I'm trying to track down the stepdaughter to get her side of the story." "Why now?" Olivia asked, stepping forward. "It has been almost a year." The marshal looked at her closely. "You are Olivia Sutherland?" "I am Olivia Norris now. I married last year." "I see." The marshal pulled out a small notebook. "Mrs. Norris, I need to ask you some questions about the night of the fire." Olivia felt Dalton's hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "I will answer your questions, but I want you to know that I did not start that fire. I was asleep inside the house when it started. I nearly died." "That is what I suspected," the marshal said, surprising her. "Catherine Sutherland has been making increasingly wild accusations, and several people in Silver Peak have come forward to say they do not believe her story. Additionally, we found evidence that the fire started in Catherine's bedroom, not in yours." Olivia felt her knees go weak. "What?" "It appears that Catherine may have started the fire herself, intending to blame you. When you fled, it only made you look guilty, which served her purposes. She used your absence to take full control of your father's ranch." "So I'm not wanted for arson?" "No, madam. In fact, I am here to inform you that Catherine Sutherland has been arrested. She confessed to starting the fire after we presented her with the evidence. She is facing charges of arson and fraud. As Thomas Sutherland's daughter, you are entitled to half the ranch according to his will. A lawyer in Silver Peak has been trying to locate you to inform you of your inheritance." Olivia sat down heavily on the porch steps, her mind reeling. "She confessed?" "Eventually. She also admitted that your father's death was an accident and that she blamed you out of grief and spite. I am sorry for what you have been through, Mrs. Norris. Justice was slow, but it has finally arrived." After the marshal left, Olivia sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. Dalton sat beside her, still holding Thomas, and waited patiently for her to speak. "I am vindicated," Olivia finally said. "Everyone knows I did not kill my father or start the fire." "How does it feel?" Dalton asked. "Strange. Relieving. Like I can finally breathe fully for the first time in over a year." She looked at her husband. "And I am entitled to half the ranch. That is a significant amount of money and land." "What do you want to do with it?" Olivia thought about it carefully. "I do not want to go back to Silver Peak. Too many bad memories, but I would like to sell my share of the ranch and use the money to buy our own place, something we can build together from the ground up." Dalton smiled. "I think that is a perfect plan." Over the next several months, Olivia worked with the lawyer in Silver Peak to sell her half of the ranch. The buyer was a consortium of investors, and they paid a fair price. With the money from the sale, combined with what Dalton had saved, they were able to purchase a beautiful piece of property north of Sacramento, 200 acres of good land with water rights and timber. They named their ranch the Sutherland Norris, honoring both their families. Hammond was sorry to lose them, but understood, and he gave them his blessing along with several good horses as a parting gift. Building the ranch was hard work, but it was also joyful. They hired a few hands to help, but much of the work they did themselves. Dalton designed and built a barn that was a work of art, spacious and well ventilated. Olivia worked on the house, which was larger than their cabin, but still modest and comfortable. Thomas toddled around getting into everything, and Olivia often worked with him strapped to her back. It was exhausting and wonderful and everything she had ever wanted. In the spring of 1887, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Charlotte, after Dalton's mother. Charlotte had her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes, and she was doted upon by everyone, especially her older brother. The ranch prospered. Dalton's horse breeding program gained a reputation for quality, and buyers came from all over California to purchase their stock. Olivia managed the business side, proving to have a sharp mind for numbers and contracts. Together, they built something successful and sustainable. On Thomas's 5th birthday, Olivia stood on the porch of their home, watching her husband and son work with a young colt in the corral. Charlotte was napping inside, and the ranch hands were tending to various tasks around the property. The sun was warm, the breeze was gentle, and everything felt perfect. She thought about her father, about the life she had lost in Silver Peak. She thought about Catherine, who was serving a prison sentence for her crimes. She thought about that terrible night when she had fled into the desert with nothing but fear and desperation. And then she thought about the man who had taken her in, who had told her that blame was not hers to carry, who had loved her through all the broken pieces and helped her become whole again. Dalton looked up from the corral and caught her watching. He smiled, that same brilliant smile that had first made her heart skip, and waved. She waved back, feeling her chest fill with gratitude and love. "Mama," Charlotte's voice called from inside. "I am awake." Olivia turned and went inside, where her daughter was standing in her crib, hair tousled and arms outstretched. She picked Charlotte up, kissed her soft cheek, and carried her out to the porch. "Want to watch Papa and Thomas with the horses?" Olivia asked. Charlotte nodded enthusiastically, and they walked down to the corral together. Dalton saw them coming and opened the gate to let them in. Thomas ran over, excited to show his little sister the colt. "He is doing so good, Mama," Thomas said. "Papa says I can help train him." "You are going to be an excellent horse trainer," Olivia said, ruffling his dark hair, "just like your papa." Dalton put his arm around her waist, pulling her close, while Charlotte squirmed to get down and see the horses better. They stood there together, watching their children, and Olivia felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "What are you thinking about?" Dalton asked softly. "How lucky I am," Olivia said. "How you saved me in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Dalton corrected. "I was drifting before I met you, Olivia. You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. You gave me everything." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I love you, Dalton Norris." "I love you too, Olivia Norris. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that." As the sun began to set over their ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Olivia knew that she had finally found where she belonged. The pain of the past would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. She was defined by the love she had found, the family she had built, and the future that stretched out before them like an open road. The years continued to unfold with grace and abundance. The Sutherland Norris Ranch became one of the most respected horse operations in Northern California. Dalton's reputation as a horseman grew, and people traveled from as far as Oregon and Arizona to buy his stock or seek his advice on training difficult animals. He never used force or fear, always patience and respect, and his horses were known for their intelligence and gentle temperaments. Olivia expanded their operations into cattle as well, seeing an opportunity in the growing beef market. She proved to have a shrewd business sense, negotiating excellent prices and establishing relationships with buyers in San Francisco and beyond. Together, she and Dalton made a formidable team, complementing each other's strengths and supporting each other through challenges. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who idolized his father and spent every possible moment in the barn learning about horses. By the time he was 8, he could gentle a green horse better than most grown men. He had inherited his mother's green eyes and his father's steady temperament, and Olivia often saw glimpses of her own father in the way Thomas moved through the world with quiet confidence. Charlotte was entirely different, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. She wanted to know everything, do everything, be everywhere at once. She learned to ride almost before she could walk properly, and she had no fear of anything. Dalton called her his little wildfire, and the name suited her perfectly. In 1889, when Thomas was 7 and Charlotte was 2, Olivia gave birth to twins, much to everyone's surprise. The boys, whom they named Daniel and Samuel, were identical and inseparable from their first breath. They came into the world during a thunderstorm in July, arriving so quickly that Dalton barely had time to fetch the midwife from town. 4 children, Dalton had said, looking slightly dazed as he held one twin while Olivia nursed the other. We have 4 children. Are you overwhelmed? Olivia asked, smiling despite her exhaustion. I am amazed, he corrected, amazed and grateful, and so deeply in love with you, I do not have words for it. The house they had built suddenly seemed much smaller with 4 children, so they added on to it, building more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Mrs. Chen, a widow from Sacramento, came to help with the cooking and housework, and she quickly became part of the family. Life was chaotic but full. There were always children underfoot, horses to train, cattle to manage, hands to supervise. Olivia and Dalton worked from dawn until well after dark most days, but they carved out time for each other and for their children. Sunday dinners were sacred, with everyone gathered around the big table sharing food and stories. In the evenings, Dalton would play his harmonica while Olivia sang, and the children would dance around the parlor. When Thomas was 10, he asked his mother about Silver Peak and his grandfather. Olivia realized she had never told her children the full story of what had happened before they came to California. That night, after the younger children were in bed, she and Dalton sat down with Thomas and Charlotte, who was now 5 and old enough to understand, and told them everything. Thomas listened with wide eyes, processing the information that his mother had been falsely accused and had to flee. Grandmother Catherine was cruel, he said finally. She was in pain, Olivia said carefully. Grief made her cruel. That does not excuse what she did, but it helps explain it. Are you still sad about Grandfather Thomas? Charlotte asked. Sometimes, Olivia admitted. I miss him, and I wish he could have met you children. But I have learned that it is possible to be sad about what you lost and happy about what you have at the same time. I am named after him, Thomas said. That is an honor. It is indeed, Dalton agreed. Your grandfather was a good man, and you carry his name with pride. The conversation seemed to satisfy the children's curiosity, and they went to bed without further questions. Dalton and Olivia sat up for a while longer, talking about how quickly time was passing and how their children were growing. Do you ever regret leaving Silver Peak? Dalton asked. Not for a moment, Olivia said firmly. That place took everything from me. This place gave me everything. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything, Dalton said, echoing words he had spoken years before, and we will keep giving for all the years we have left. Those years unfolded with the steady rhythm of seasons. Springs were for foaling and calving, summers for hard work and long days, autumns for harvest and preparations, winters for maintenance and planning. The children grew taller and stronger, each developing their own personalities and interests. Thomas remained passionate about horses and announced at 14 that he intended to take over the horse operation when he was old enough. Charlotte declared at 10 that she was going to be a veterinarian, which was nearly unheard of for a woman. But Olivia encouraged her anyway. The twins, Daniel and Samuel, were inseparable tricksters who kept everyone on their toes, but worked hard when it mattered. In 1895, when Olivia was 34 and Dalton was 39, they welcomed their 5th and final child, a daughter they named Rose. Rose was a surprise, arriving a full 8 years after the twins, but she was welcomed with joy by the entire family. Charlotte especially loved having a baby sister and spent hours helping to care for her. The ranch continued to thrive. They now employed 15 full-time hands and had expanded to over 500 acres. They were well known throughout California, and their reputation for quality and integrity was unmatched. Dalton had trained several of the hands to work with horses using his methods, ensuring that his philosophy would continue even after he was no longer able to do the work himself. Olivia had become something of a businesswoman of note, serving on the board of the local Cattlemen's Association and advising other ranchers on financial matters. She had come a long way from the frightened young woman who had fled into the Nevada desert, and she was proud of who she had become. On their 15th wedding anniversary in March of 1899, Dalton surprised Olivia by taking her to San Francisco for a long weekend. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch the children, and they took the train to the city, staying in a fine hotel and eating in restaurants and walking along the waterfront like young sweethearts. "I cannot remember the last time we had time alone together," Olivia said as they strolled through Golden Gate Park. "It has been too long," Dalton agreed. "We have been so focused on the children and the ranch that we have neglected ourselves." "Do you feel neglected?" Olivia asked, suddenly worried. Dalton stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Not neglected. Never that. But I miss having long conversations with you, just the two of us. I miss being able to kiss you without someone interrupting. I miss the quiet intimacy of our early days together." "I miss that too," Olivia admitted. "We should make more time for it." "We should, and we will, starting now." He kissed her there in the park, and Olivia felt the same flutter in her stomach that she had felt the first time he kissed her by the creek 15 years ago. Some things never changed, and her love for this man was one of them. They returned home refreshed and reconnected, ready to tackle the challenges of ranch life with renewed energy. Thomas, now 14, was increasingly capable of handling significant responsibilities. Charlotte, at 12, was reading every veterinary book she could find. The twins, now 10, were finally learning to channel their energy productively. And little Rose, at 4, was the darling of the entire ranch. In 1901, tragedy struck when one of their best ranch hands, a young man named Miguel, was killed in an accident involving a spooked horse. The entire ranch mourned, and Olivia found herself thinking about her father's death again. The parallel was not exact, but the senseless loss of life brought back memories she thought she had fully processed. Dalton found her in the barn one evening, crying softly as she groomed her horse. "Talk to me," he said gently, taking the brush from her hand and setting it aside. "Miguel's death made me think about my father," Olivia said, "about how quickly life can end, how one moment can change everything. I know it was not my fault, I have known that for years, but sometimes the guilt creeps back in." "Blame is not yours to carry," Dalton said, repeating the words he had spoken to her so many years ago. "It was not your fault then, and it is not your fault now. Accidents happen, Olivia. Terrible, senseless accidents. We cannot control them or prevent them all. We can only live fully while we are here. I know, I just wish I could have saved them both, Miguel and my father. You cannot save everyone, love, but you have saved so many in different ways. You have built this ranch, raised these children, created jobs and opportunities for dozens of people. Your father would be so proud of who you have become." Olivia leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "Thank you for always knowing what to say. Thank you for always letting me be here for you." They held Miguel's funeral on the ranch, and the entire community came to pay respects. Olivia spoke about the importance of cherishing each day and the people we love, and many people told her afterward that her words had moved them. She realized that her own experiences with grief and loss had given her a perspective that could help others, and that realization brought a sense of purpose. As the new century unfolded, the Sutherland Norris Ranch adapted and evolved. They added new breeding lines for the horses, invested in better irrigation for the pastures, and built a modern barn with all the latest improvements. Thomas, now a young man of 18, was proving to be as talented with horses as his father, and he was taking on more of the day-to-day management. Charlotte, at 16, had been accepted to a veterinary program in San Francisco, one of the first women to be admitted. She would leave for the city in the fall, and while Olivia was proud, she also felt the bittersweet ache of watching her daughter grow up and move away. The twins, now 14, had finally settled on their respective interests. Daniel loved the business side of ranching and spent hours with Olivia learning about accounts and contracts. Samuel was more interested in cattle than horses and was working to improve their beef operation. And Rose, now 8, was showing signs of being a gifted artist, constantly drawing horses and landscapes and people. Dalton had converted a corner of the parlor into a small studio for her, and she spent hours there with her pencils and papers. On a warm evening in June of 1903, as the family gathered for Sunday dinner, Olivia looked around the table at her husband and children and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This life, this family, this love, it was everything she had never dared to hope for in those dark days after her father's death. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" Rose asked, noticing her mother's expression. "I am thinking about how blessed I am," Olivia said honestly. "How blessed we all are." "Tell us the story again," Charlotte said, "about how you and Papa met." It was a story the children never tired of hearing, though they must have heard it 100 times. Olivia looked at Dalton, who smiled and nodded. "It was September of 1883, Olivia began, and I was running from the worst night of my life. I had lost everything and everyone I loved. I was alone in the desert with nothing but a horse and hope that was barely there." "And then Papa found you," Thomas interjected, even though he knew the story by heart. "And then your Papa found me," Olivia agreed. "He was camping alone, and I rode up to his fire like a ghost. I must have looked terrible, but he did not turn me away. He gave me blanket and coffee and safety." "What did you think when you first saw him, Mama?" Charlotte asked. "I thought he looked kind," Olivia said. "And I was right. He was the kindest man I'd ever met, except for my father." "What did you think when you first saw Mama?" Daniel asked Dalton. "I thought she was brave," Dalton said. "Brave and beautiful and in desperate need of help. And I knew somehow that helping her was going to change my life." "Because you fell in love," Rose said dreamily. "Because we fell in love," Dalton confirmed. "Not right away, but gradually as we traveled together. By the time we reached California, I could not imagine my life without her." "And now you have been married for 19 years, Samuel said. "That is a long time." "It is indeed," Olivia agreed, "and I hope we have many more years ahead of us." "To family," Thomas said, raising his glass of water. "To family," everyone echoed, and they clinked, seamed their glasses together. After dinner, as the children scattered to their various activities, Dalton and Olivia walked out to the porch to watch the sunset. It was something they tried to do every evening, a few moments of peace before the demands of bedtime and preparations for the next day. 19 years, Dalton said, putting his arm around her waist. "Where did the time go?" "Into building this," Olivia said, gesturing at the ranch spread before them. "Into raising them." She nodded toward the house, where they could hear the children's voices. "Into loving you." "Best years of my life," Dalton said. "Every single one of them." "Mine too, even the hard ones." "Especially the hard ones. Those are the years that tested us and proved we could weather anything together." Olivia turned to face him fully, taking both his hands. "Do you remember what you told me that first night when I asked why you were helping me? I said you needed help, and I could provide it. And you said that blame was not mine to carry. I remember, and it is still true. You never deserved the blame Catherine tried to put on you. You never deserved any of it. I know that now. It took time, but I finally believe it, and I have you to thank for that. You saw me when I could not see myself. You believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You loved me before I could love myself again." Dalton cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized were falling. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done, Olivia, from that first moment to this one and every moment in between." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and gold. Inside the house, their children laughed and argued and lived, and around them, the ranch they had built hummed with life and purpose. As they walked back inside hand in hand, Olivia thought about the long journey that had brought her here. From the horror of her father's death to the cruelty of Catherine's accusations, from the terrifying flight into the desert to the moment she rode into Dalton's firelight, From the slow building of trust to the explosive realization of love, every step had led her to this moment, this life, this profound happiness. She thought about her father sometimes, usually with a smile rather than tears now. She imagined he would be proud of her, of the woman she had become and the family she had built. She had taken the ranch knowledge he taught her and created something new and lasting. She had taken the love he showed her and multiplied it, passing it on to her children and husband. And Catherine, locked away in a Nevada prison for her crimes, had become little more than a footnote in Olivia's story. She had tried to destroy Olivia with her blame and accusations, but she had only succeeded in pushing Olivia toward the life she was meant to live. The years continued to pass with steady grace. Charlotte graduated from her veterinary program and returned to the ranch to establish the first veterinary practice in the region. Thomas took over full management of the horse operation when Dalton's back started giving him trouble in 1908. The twins, now 23, were running the cattle side of the business with impressive skill. And Rose, at 13, was developing into a talented artist whose drawings and paintings were starting to attract serious attention. In 1910, Thomas married a lovely young woman named Sarah from Sacramento, and they gave Olivia and Dalton their first grandchild, a boy they named Thomas Jr., in 1911. Charlotte married a fellow veterinarian named Dr. James Reed in 1912, and they had a daughter named Eleanor in 1913. The twins remained bachelors for the time being, too focused on their work to think about marriage, though Olivia suspected that would change soon enough. Dalton turned 55 in 1911, and Olivia turned 50 in 1916. They were no longer young, but they were healthy and active, still working on the ranch every day, though with less of the physically demanding tasks. They had good people working for them now, people they trusted, which allowed them more freedom to spend time with their grandchildren and each other. On their 30th wedding anniversary in March of 1914, the entire extended family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. There were nearly 50 people present, including children, grandchildren, ranch hands, neighbors, and friends. A long table was set up in the yard, groaning under the weight of food, and lanterns were strung in the trees. As the party wound down and the stars came out, Dalton pulled Olivia aside for a private moment. They walked to the creek where he had first told her he loved her, and he pulled a small box from his pocket. "What is this?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Open it." Inside was a delicate gold locket engraved with their initials and the date of their wedding. Olivia opened it to find tiny photographs of each of their 5 children. "Dalton, it is beautiful." 30 years ago, I met a woman who was running from her past, and I had no idea she would become my entire future. You have given me everything, Olivia, a home, a family, a purpose, a love that has sustained me through every challenge. I wanted you to have something that reminded you of what we built together. Olivia fastened the locket around her neck, feeling its comforting weight. I do not need a reminder. I am reminded every single day when I wake up beside you, when I see our children and grandchildren, when I look at the ranch we created. But I will treasure this always. They stood by the creek in the moonlight, holding each other, and Olivia felt the same sense of rightness she had felt on their wedding day. This was where she belonged. This was who she was meant to be with. This was the life she was meant to live. "Thank you for telling me that blame was not mine to carry," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." "Thank you for believing me," Dalton whispered back. "Thank you for taking a chance on a drifting cowboy who had nothing to offer but his heart. Your heart was everything I needed." They kissed under the stars, and in that moment Olivia knew with absolute certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, just as they always had. The scared young woman who had fled into the Nevada desert was long gone, replaced by a confident, accomplished woman who had built a legacy of love and strength. As they walked back to the party hand in hand, their children and grandchildren running to meet them with laughter and joy, Olivia felt a completeness that went soul deep. She had survived the worst and found the best. She had been broken and made whole. She had been blamed and then freed. And most importantly, she had been loved with such fierce devotion that it had transformed everything she thought she knew about what was possible. Dalton Norris had saved her life that night in the desert, but more than that, he had shown her how to truly live, and for that she would be grateful for all the days of her life and beyond.